better voices. That's what Rushnychok rose because of Yurko, Andriy, Eugen, phenomenal singers, each in their own way, and each could take the lead. You listen to Rushnychok, and it's not, Andriy was our lead singer, but Eugen is right up there on a par, and when he sang in a live performance, there was a different feeling in the hall. It allowed us to pace. We had an ebb and flow to the presentation as well. I wasn't a particularly good drummer. I wasn't. Tino Papa of Sinistipiu is by far a better drummer. His syncopation, the speed with which he plays, and the best band, bar none, in Montreal when I was a young kid was the Sheramata band. And their drummer's name was Mike Boyko. And Mike Boyko would drum with one hand and hold a microphone with another. And he was like the personification of a lounge act, but once he put the microphone down, he was also amazing. The syncopation was wonderful. Montreal rose to the scene of, I think, people's awareness musically for that style of music because of Sheramata. The Rushnichok sound came from the heart, from a willingness to vary and take some risks, but it was truly the voices of these guys.
Як сурми заграють похідні горни, предвісники грізних татар. У нічку тривожу, у ніченьку чорну, коня осідлає козак.
Ми почали Рушничок 1969 року. Мій батько був співвластителем у ресторані «Ла Степ» у Монреалі. Вони дуже мало знали про ресторани, але зійшлися партнери і створили ресторацію. Дуже гарний будинок збудували. 14 partners, they didn't know a whole lot about running a restaurant, but the intention was good. Come New Year's Eve, I was in university, and my father knew that I played in pickup bands here and there for weddings and whatnot. He said, well, can you get a band together we want to open the restaurant with a New Year's Eve dance. And I heard that one of my fellow students at Loyola, which is now Concordia University, had a phenomenal voice, but I never met him. I played with Rushnychok and with his brother Andriy Harisimovich from time to time at weddings and at Prosvita and things of that sort. And so we got together for this first practice. I also invited a mandolin player. His name was Mike Kushner. And we met at Uno, the practice hall. We used to play, among other things, for the Marunchak dance ensemble. Ми грали для дуже талановитого хореографа Петра Марунчака, для його групи, перед тим, що ми створили Рушничок. Ми всі зійшлися і чекали на Михайла Кушніра. Mike Kushner, the mandolin player, was supposed to come join us. The caretaker opened the door for us. Ми пішли до залі і почали настроювати інструменти. Я вкладав бубни, ми грали і так далі. Почали грати. Михайла нема. І на другий день я приходжу до університету, і він підступає до мене, і він є досить сердитий. I stood there and I knocked. Forget it. І ми не знали, що сторож не залишив двері відкриті. Він нас пустив і тоді засунув двері за собою. Ми могли вийти, але ніхто не міг поступити. Я думаю, що Михайло Кушнір десь ще далі на мене гнівається. Що то за приятель запросив на пробу, і він каже, look, I live outside of Montreal, it's too far for me to commute. Thanks a lot, forget about it, guys. Залишилося аж 4. І почався оркестр Rushnychok. That's how Rushnychok started.
Любімся, обнімімося, єднаймося, братаймося.
The radio, the albums, the musical influences were, of course, Beach Boys for harmonies, the Beatles for energy and creativity, the Stones, and я дуже любив the Dave Clark Five. I mean, because the drummer dominated, right? How do you know a drummer's knocking at the door? It gets louder and faster, right? The beat gets louder and faster than knocking. So я любив Dave Clark, who was the centerpiece of the Dave Clark Five. Але найкраще я любив, my favorite drummer was Danny Serafin of Chicago. He's such a lyrical musician, and his fills, the energy is wonderful. Мене батько хотів, щоб я навчився на акордеоні. I'm 10 years old. Son, you should play a musical instrument. Okay. What would you like to play? Oh, Tato, I'd like to play the guitar. The accordion will be good. You know, so I hated it, but that's what musical knowledge I have was accordion based. And the best band, bar none, in Montreal when I was a young kid was the Sheramata band. And their drummer's name was Mike Boyko. And Mike Boyko would drum with one hand and hold a microphone with another. And he was like the personification of a lounge act, but once he put the microphone down, he was also amazing. The syncopation was wonderful. They performed Sheramata, were the backup for the Chladun dance ensemble, which was, Rushnychok, of course, big name out of Montreal, but Chladun was also energized, maybe not as accomplished a dance group, but the band made it happen. And I would go to these weddings mesmerized. I mean, I'd be bored, right? All people much older than myself. I'd be sitting at the stage just looking up at Mike Boyko. That's what, growing up, I mean, of the Ukrainian bands, they were, you know, Montreal first, and you can still probably find vinyl of Sheramata. Montreal rose to the scene of, I think, people's awareness musically for that style of music because of Sheramata.
Чи то кінь стоїть, що сива гривонька, подобалась мені тая дівчинонька.
Я виріс у Сумі на таборі. Я пригадую, що літом зійшлися і не студенти, але сумівці маршурували і мали управи. And they needed someone to keep beat. And I was the guy who brought bongos to camp. In the not too distant future, I was 16, 17, and people were asking me, they knew I played at camp. So there was the Tsap band, there was Steve Bida, the late Steve Bida, and Rostislav Kulish, phenomenal trumpet player. So Bida, Kulish, they would ask me to drum with them. These were all bands that would play at weddings. There was a natural chemistry. It flowed almost immediately. Melodically, I think the influences are banduriste from Detroit. Andri's father, Pan Harisimovich, Pan Pokini, Stefan Harisimovich, провадив mandolinovую orchestra. He had a mandolin orchestra, which Andri played in. And so many of the songs came through his father. Він нам дуже добру пораду давав. The Beatles recorded their first album 4-track, and that was what was available. We recorded 4-track, Our engineer was a lovely young woman of Polish heritage, and her name was Elizabeth. There was this simpatico, like she could hear things in our music that she recognized. And it was at RCA Studios in Montreal, and we simply went in and we bought the time. That's all there was to it. And I think we did it over 3 nights, but my memory is sketchy, and X number of hours, and put it together, and we had them printed in Smith Falls, Ontario, because that's where RCA had its production plant. Out we came with a record and started distributing it ourselves through Ukrainian book and gift stores. And individually, but that's quite a hassle. Please on the page, could you send me an album? There's quite a bit of work, but we did that as well. Ми 10 тисяч продали і перестали рахувати після того. Відгук був знаменитий. Я думаю, що людям сподобалося енергію.
Заспіваймо пісню веселеньку, про Сусіду молоденьку, про Сусідку заспіваймо, серце наше звеселяймо.
We went to Irene Photo Studio, Bukini Panvachyanen, phenomenal photographer in Montreal. He took our picture at Botanical Gardens. Ми вчили строї тоді, heavily influenced by the Kubainski Kozaki. Which were all about Vegas stage show presentation, which is what we were about as well. We tried to take what in their own way the Sharamata band did so beautifully musically. We tried to reach harmonies, musical excellence, but also do a stage presentation. And so we uczyli stroji, and we put out our own album, and we followed it with 4 others, so there are 5 Ukrainian albums. The label we formed was Sage Promotions. Stefan, Andriy, George, Eugene, Sage. Якраз тоді почалися другі оркестри. Rushnychok started, well, let's start our own band. And there were many talented bands around the time, Sinistepio being the first to start up around that time. My kum, Slavko Vorkevich, Dr. Jerry Vorkevich, who lives in Toronto now, was part of Sinistepio, and they were popular around the time. As other bands started up in Montreal, we started out at the Ukrainian club La Steppe. Then we were engaged at weekends. A lot of the time at the sports club on the main, St. Lawrence Boulevard in Montreal. We were really a club band in many ways, but the word started spreading. We were invited to perform at Senator Paul Yuzik's daughter's wedding on Parliament Hill. That was the breakthrough invitation. And after that invitation, newspapers, the Ukrainian media wrote up about us, and very favorably, and we started being invited out of town. So the other bands filled in Montreal, and we started traveling. The festival scene broke open. Dauphin and Vegreville had been in existence long before Rushnychok, but they started hearing about us. Oh, what are these Eastern guys all about? Let's bring them down. So Vesna Saskatoon Folk Festival, Vegreville Ukrainian Festival, the Dauphin Ukrainian Festival, Garden State, New Jersey festival, 10,000 people in an amphitheater. It was amazing. Soyuzilka, the Ukrainian resort, invited us to play. We first started there accompanying the Maronchak Dance Ensemble, and then we had a tochka, we had a mimale частину тої презентації, де ми співали. Танцюристи передягалися, готувалися на другий танець, а Rushnychok співав. І тим способом люди почали про нас говорити, і тоді Союзівка почала запрошувати нас, щоб ми виступали на Союзівці на забавах так само. Хлопці, я думаю, що я добре співаю, але хлопці краще співають, так що їхні голоси і той склад, енергія Рушничка, наша філософія, ми не лише популярні пісні співали, але ми навіть з табору ми пригадуємо навіть повстанські пісні, чи «Моя Ванічка», пісня січових стрільців, взяли під нашою інтерпретацією, трошки додали ритму рок, і то не завжди значить, що треба твердо грати або скоро грати. Можна лагідно грати і дуже гарну презентацію створити, і голоси. То, що було відмінне про Рушничок, мої приятелі дуже добрі голоси мають. Люди почали то запізнати і реагувати, і ми стали більш популярними. Що було цікаво, ми почали посилати на Україну наші альбоми. І люди почали переховувати, копіювати, розпосуджувати. І ми про це не знали. Ми знали, що це стається, і ми були дуже задоволені це знати. But people were copying our albums across Ukraine and in Poland. And there was this underground listening to our albums that people now talk about. People will take me aside, having come from Poland and Ukraine, and say, you know, my father listened to your albums. My father would open the windows and blast your music across the square underneath our window because he was so proud of Ukrainian music.
Say